I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is president of Eurasia Group, Ian Bremmer. Ian, thanks so much for coming on again.
Absolutely.
Eurasia Group just released its top risks for 2025 report, and it comes at a really precarious time that the world finds itself in. Multiple wars and conflicts span across multiple continents. Countries around the world are rejecting the status quo in elections, and Donald Trump is set to re-enter the White House for a second term in just a few weeks. The report also found that we are headed into a time of geopolitical instability. So let's start there. Talk about that geopolitical instability for us.
Well, let's start with a positive note, which is that the major wars and conflicts we've talked about over the last year are in some ways set to recede. So we have big war between Russia and Ukraine that has, dominated conversations for 3 years. Pretty good chance we'll have a ceasefire over the course of 2025. In 2024, of course, we had exploding wars across the Middle East, focused on Gaza, but also Lebanon. Those are winding down. And there was also a war in the United States, right, about Americans against Americans, and an enormous concern that this election was going to be seen as illegitimate by half the population. That didn't happen. Trump won. He won the popular vote in addition to the electoral vote. And though a lot of people may not like him, everyone agrees it was a free and fair and not rigged election. And so he comes into office with more legitimacy. So, in that regard, 2025 should feel pretty good. And yet it doesn't. And so why is that? And the reason for it is because we really have a breakdown of the global order. We have a reversion to what we call a G0 world, an absence of global leadership. It's really the law of the jungle. And, in the law of the jungle, the apex predator does very well. And that's clearly the United States, but it's a very dangerous place and time for pretty much everybody else. And that's what we're looking at.
The law of the jungle sounds like a scary place to be if you're not the apex predator. And you compared this time that we're in right now to the 1930s. And anyone who knows anything about history, the 1930s, not a great time. It was a precursor to World War II. So can you talk to us a little bit about that comparison?
Yeah, it was a time when the institutions were inadequate. The rules were inadequate to determine how countries should engage with each other. It was a time of when countries didn't know if their territorial integrity was going to be intact, that they didn't feel like their alliances were certain and sure. It's exactly the kind of conversations that we're having right now. Whether it's coming from Russia, or coming from China, or coming from the United States, the old rule book is being ripped up. And the people that need that rule book are playing defense. They're saying, look, we just hope that we're not going to be in the headlines, because it's not like they're powerful enough to actually, combat anyone that's trying to undermine them. It's more like give enough to make it go away, try to appease them, try to, get that. You talk about the 30s. Appeasement was a big conversation in the 30s. Appeasement's becoming a big conversation in 2025.